When I turned 18, everything changed in my house. My parents sat me down and said it was time for me to start paying rent. They told me it would help me learn responsibility and prepare me for the real world. At first, I thought they were joking, but they weren't. From that day on, I had to pay $800 every month just to live in my own home. Meanwhile, my younger sister Claire didn't have to do anything. She was only 16 at the time, but even as she got older, she never had to pay a cent. My parents said she was still finding herself, and that I, being the older one, had to set an example. It didn't matter that we were both their daughters. Somehow, the rules only applied to me. I worked part-time at a grocery store after school and took college classes during the day. Every dollar I earned went to bills and that rent. Some nights, I stayed up late just trying to figure out how to make ends meet. But I never missed a payment. I told myself it was temporary, that if I just kept going, I'd be able to move out soon and finally breathe. Claire, on the other hand, had a different life. She got a new car for her birthday, didn't work, and spent most of her days hanging out with friends. Mom always defended her, saying, "She's still young, Emily. Don't be so hard on her." I never argued. I just nodded and went back to my room, feeling smaller every time. It wasn't just about the money. It was about what it meant. I felt like I was being punished for being responsible. Every time I looked at Claire, laughing with Mom or Dad in the kitchen, I wondered why love in my family came with conditions. Why was I the one who had to earn it? Still, I kept quiet. I paid my rent, helped around the house, and tried to stay focused on my future. Deep down, though, I promised myself that one day things would change. I didn't know how or when, but I knew I wouldn't live the rest of my life feeling like I owed them something just for existing. Sometimes, when I came home late from work, I would find Claire asleep on the couch, TV still on, snacks everywhere. Mom would smile and say, "She had a long day." I'd just walk past them, biting my tongue. I knew if I said anything, I'd be called jealous or ungrateful. So I kept my silence. It was hard, feeling like the outsider in your own home. But that silence slowly became my strength. Every time they reminded me to pay rent, I reminded myself that one day I'd never have to ask anyone for permission to live in peace. I didn't realize it then, but all those long nights, all those rent payments, all that unfairness, they were shaping me into someone stronger. I never argued with my parents about the rent. I just accepted it as part of my life. I went to college during the day and worked part-time at a small cafe in the evenings. My schedule was packed, but I didn't mind. I wanted to finish school, get a good job, and prove that I could stand on my own. Every month, I paid my rent without fail. Even when money was tight, I made sure I handed that envelope to my mom before the first of the month. Claire's life looked completely different. When she turned 18, she didn't get bills. She got a brand new silver car sitting in the driveway with a big red bow on top. I remember standing by the window, watching her cry tears of joy while Mom and Dad clapped. I wanted to be happy for her, but all I could feel was a heavy silence inside me. No one had ever celebrated me like that. Later that night, I overheard Mom telling Dad, "She's the baby. She deserves nice things." Those words stuck with me for years. It was like she was saying I didn't deserve anything because I was the older one, the one who was supposed to be responsible. I went to bed staring at the ceiling, wondering what I had done wrong to earn such different treatment. Every day after that, I worked harder. I picked up extra shifts, studied during my breaks, and skipped outings with friends just to save money. Whenever I felt tired or frustrated, I reminded myself that I was doing it for my future. I didn't want to depend on anyone, not my parents, not anyone else. I wanted to build a life that was truly mine. Claire never seemed to worry about money. She spent her weekends going on trips with friends or shopping online. Mom always covered for her, saying, "She's still young. Let her enjoy life." Meanwhile, I was budgeting down to the last dollar just to make sure I could pay both rent and tuition. There were nights when I'd come home from work, exhausted, and find Claire and Mom laughing over dinner. I'd quietly heat up leftovers and eat alone. I wasn't angry anymore, just numb. The distance between me and them kept growing, not because I wanted it, but because I didn't know how to bridge it. One evening, after finishing a long shift, I sat on my bed with my paycheck in hand. It wasn't much, but it was proof that I was doing it, surviving without help, even when it wasn't fair. I told myself that someday, I'd look back at this time and feel proud, not bitter. That night, before sleeping, I made a promise to myself. One day, I'd earn enough to never have to depend on them again. I didn't know when it would happen, but I knew I'd get there. And when I did, no one would ever make me feel like a burden again. Someone who would never let anyone make her feel small again. After finishing college, I packed my bags and moved to Chicago. It was scary at first, leaving everything behind, but I was ready to start a new life. I got a job at a small real estate firm and threw myself into work. The city was fast, busy, and sometimes overwhelming, but it gave me something my hometown never did: freedom. For the first time, I was living on my own without anyone reminding me what I owed them. My first few months were rough. Rent was high, and the hours were long, but I didn't mind. Every deal I closed made me feel like I was building something real. I spent weekends studying property trends, learning how to invest, and saving every dollar I could. I wasn't just trying to survive anymore. I was planning for something bigger. Even though things between me and my family were distant, I still tried to stay connected. On birthdays and holidays, I sent gifts and cards. I thought maybe, with time, things would change. But they never did. They rarely called, and when they did, the conversations felt one-sided. Mom always talked about Claire, how she helped around the house, how she cooked dinner, how thoughtful she was. Every time she said, "You should be proud of your sister," I felt a familiar ache in my chest. I was working 12-hour days to build a life from scratch, while Claire was still at home, living rent-free and being called sweet for doing chores. It didn't feel fair, but I didn't argue. One day, Mom mentioned that Claire had dropped out of college. I was surprised, but Mom brushed it off like it wasn't a big deal. She said Claire was taking time to figure things out. I bit my tongue, trying not to say what I really thought. If it had been me, they would have called me irresponsible. But for Claire, everything was always excused. I stopped expecting fairness from them. Instead, I focused on my work. The harder I worked, the more I grew. Within a couple of years, I was promoted, earning enough to start investing in small properties. Every success felt like a quiet victory, not against them, but for myself. Sometimes, late at night, I'd sit by my apartment window, looking out at the city lights. I'd think about how far I'd come since those nights back home when I couldn't even afford to relax. The loneliness still stung, but I reminded myself that silence can be powerful. I didn't need to prove anything to anyone anymore. They didn't know how hard I was working or how much I had achieved, and I never told them. I didn't need their approval. My silence wasn't weakness anymore, it was peace. I had finally learned to let their opinions fade into the... Over the next few years, my life changed completely. I worked hard, saved every penny, and learned everything I could about real estate. What started as a simple job turned into a real career. I bought my first small house, fixed it up, and rented it out. It wasn't perfect, but it gave me hope that I could build something lasting. From there, I kept going. Every time I made a profit, I reinvested it. Soon, one house turned into 2, and then 3. By the time I was 28, I owned 3 rental properties in different parts of the city. It still amazed me sometimes, thinking about how far I had come from that girl who once paid rent to her own parents just to have a roof over her head. Even though I had grown so much, my parents still didn't see me any differently. Whenever we talked, they acted like I was barely getting by. They'd make small comments like, "We hope all those years of paying rent taught you how to handle money." I would just smile and say, "Yeah, they did." Inside, I couldn't help but laugh a little. They had no idea that I now own more properties than most people twice my age. I never bragged or tried to prove anything. I didn't need to. I had learned that some things are better kept quiet. Letting people underestimate me had its own power. I visited them on holidays, gave them nice gifts, and listened to them talk about how proud they were of Claire for helping around the house. I just nodded, hiding a smile behind my coffee cup. My success was quiet but steady. I learned to negotiate, to read markets, and to stay patient when deals took time. It wasn't luck, it was years of sacrifice and hard work. Still, a part of me couldn't forget where I came from or how differently things could have been if they had treated me fairly. That thought didn't make me angry anymore, but it stayed with me. Then one day, something unexpected happened. I got a call from an old friend back in my hometown. She mentioned that my parents' house, the same house I once paid rent in, was up for sale. At first, I didn't believe her. That house had always seemed like their pride and joy, the one thing they would never let go of. I didn't say much on the phone, but after hanging up, I sat there for a long time thinking. It felt strange, like the universe was putting something right in front of me on purpose. I had worked so hard to build a life on my own, and now here was an opportunity that felt almost poetic. I didn't know then what I was going to do, but I could feel something shifting. Karma, it seemed, had finally found its way back, and this time it was waiting right at my old front door. Background: while I quietly built the life they never believed I could have. One afternoon, while I was going through some property listings, I got a call from a local real estate agent back in my hometown. She said she had something that might interest me, a familiar address that instantly made my heart skip a beat. It was my parents' house, my childhood home, the same place where I once paid rent just to live under their roof. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. The agent explained that the house was being sold because the owners had fallen behind on their mortgage. My dad's business had apparently failed, and they were struggling to keep up with payments. Hearing that made me pause. I wasn't happy about their situation, but I couldn't ignore how ironic it all felt. The same house that had caused me so much pain was now slipping out of their hands. The agent went on about the details, the listing price, and the current market. I listened carefully, asking questions like it was just another investment opportunity. Inside, though, it felt personal, too personal. I told her I wanted to make an offer, but asked her not to mention my name to the sellers. She agreed, and within a few hours I sent her my proposal, a full cash offer, no conditions. A week later, she called me again. My offer had been accepted. Just like that, the house was mine. I remember sitting quietly in my apartment, holding the confirmation papers in my hand. The same house that once made me feel small, unwanted, and unappreciated now belonged to me. And no one even knew. I didn't tell anyone, not my parents, not Claire, not even my friends. It was my secret. I didn't buy it out of spite. I bought it because something deep inside me needed that closure. The little girl who used to pay rent just to be part of her family finally owned the very walls that made her feel like a stranger. The first time I saw the property papers with my name on them, I felt a mix of emotions, pride, sadness, and peace all at once. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about taking back control, quietly and with dignity. I had built my life from nothing, and now I had come full circle. Over the next few days, I thought about what to do next. I could have told them right away, but I didn't. Instead, I decided to stay silent for a while. I wanted to see how they would react when the new owner, the one they didn't know was me, sent them the official letter about the sale. I knew it would shock them. I knew it might even hurt. But deep down, I also knew it was time for them to learn the same lesson. For the next few months, I stayed completely quiet. No one in my family knew that I was now the owner of the house. I kept paying the property taxes, took care of small repairs through a local contractor, and made sure everything stayed in order. On paper, I was just another investor, managing one more property. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just business. It was personal. I didn't rush anything. I wanted time to think. I told myself I wouldn't do anything out of anger. I wasn't trying to destroy them. I just wanted them to understand what it felt like to be on the other side of power, to experience what they once made me feel. After a few quiet months, the legal process moved forward. Their grace period to make payments had ended. The papers were finalized, and the notice was ready to be served. I read through it carefully, making sure everything was handled professionally. When I finally approved it, I sat there for a few minutes, staring at the document. It felt strange, knowing I was sending an eviction notice to my own parents. A few days later, my phone rang early in the morning. It was my mom. Her voice was shaking as she said, "We just got a notice saying we have to leave the house. The new owner wants us out. Can you believe how heartless people have become?" I could hear my dad in the background, cursing whoever bought the house. For a moment, I almost told her the truth. But then I stopped myself. I simply said, maybe the new owner believes in teaching responsibility. There was silence on the other end. Not the kind that comes from confusion, but the kind that comes from realization. I didn't have to say anything more. They knew. I could hear my mom's breath catch, and my dad's voice fade in the background. No one said another word. Then, quietly, she hung up. After that call, I sat on my couch for a long time, staring at the city outside my window. My heart felt heavy, but also strangely calm. It wasn't happiness, and it wasn't exactly revenge either. It was something in between, a deep, quiet sense of balance. I didn't take pleasure in their pain. I didn't celebrate or tell anyone. But for the first time, I felt like I had finally closed a chapter that had haunted me for years. The house that once drained me, that once made me feel like a stranger, was now completely mine. And the people who had once made me feel small now knew exactly how that felt. It wasn't about payback anymore. It was about peace, the kind that comes when life finally turns the tables, and you don't even have to lift your voice to be heard. They had once forced on me that nothing in life is truly free. A few days after that call, I decided to drive back to Ohio. It had been years since I'd been home, and the closer I got, the heavier the air felt. The streets looked smaller than I remembered, but the memories were still sharp. Every corner, every tree, every sound brought something back. I parked my car in front of the old house, and for a moment I just sat there staring at it. It was strange seeing it again, knowing it was legally mine now. When I finally stepped out, I saw Claire sitting on the porch. Her face was red from crying. She looked up and froze when she saw me. After a few seconds, she ran down the steps toward me. "Emily, please," she said, her voice trembling. "Mom and Dad are a mess. They don't have anywhere to go. You can't do this." I didn't answer right away. I just looked at her, my little sister, who had always been protected, always given everything I had to fight for. I could see the fear in her eyes, but also something else, guilt. She knew how unfair things had been. "I'm not here to argue," I said calmly. "But you know what they did. You lived it too. They made me pay rent while you lived here for free. They said it was to teach me responsibility. Maybe this is their lesson now." Claire shook her head, wiping her tears. "But you're supposed to forgive them," she whispered. "You're better than this, Emily. They made mistakes, but they're still our parents." Her words hit me, but I stayed quiet for a moment before replying. "I already forgave them," I said softly. "That's why I'm here, not to destroy, but to remind." She looked at me, confused. "Remind them of what?" "That actions have consequences," I said. "That love shouldn't come with conditions. And that sometimes the things you do to others have a way of coming back around." I walked past her and looked at the house. The paint was chipped, the lawn overgrown, but it still held the same shape, the same silence. I could almost see my younger self standing in the window, wondering why she wasn't enough. Now, standing there as an adult, I finally felt the power shift. Claire didn't try to stop me again. She just stood there, crying quietly as I looked at the home that had once made me feel so small. I didn't raise my voice or argue. I didn't need to. My presence there said everything. Before I left, I turned to her one last time. "Tell them they can stay, but they'll have to live by the same rules they once gave me." Then I walked back to my car. It wasn't revenge. I stood in the living room, looking around at the place that had once been my home. Everything felt smaller than I remembered. My parents sat on the old couch, quiet and tense. The air was heavy. I could tell they didn't know what to say, and honestly, neither did I at first. Finally, I broke the silence. "You don't have to leave," I said. Both of them looked up, surprised. "But things will be different now," I continued. "You can stay here, but you'll have to pay rent to me." The room went completely still. My mom's eyes widened, and my dad's jaw tightened. They didn't say anything right away, but I could see the shock on their faces. The same rule they once used on me was now being handed back to them. The irony hung in the air like a mirror they didn't want to look into. After a long pause, Mom finally spoke. Her voice was shaking. "Emily, we were just trying to make you strong," she said softly, tears starting to form in her eyes. I looked straight at her and replied, "No, Mom. You weren't trying to make me strong. You were trying to make me small. But you failed." For a moment, no one moved. I could see my words hit her, and for the first time, I think she understood what I had carried all those years. Dad didn't speak. He just stared at the floor, his hands clenched together. There was no anger left in me, just truth. I told them the rent wouldn't be high. I wasn't trying to punish them. I just wanted them to experience what they once thought was fair. If they believed responsibility built character, then this was their chance to live by it. They could stay in the house, but now they'd have to earn it the same way I once did. Mom broke down completely then, covering her face with her hands. "We didn't know," she whispered. "We thought we were doing the right thing." I nodded, my tone calm. "I know you did, but what you taught me wasn't strength. It was pain. And now it's time you understand what that felt like, not to hurt you, but to make things even." They didn't argue. There was nothing left to say. The house felt quiet, almost peaceful in a strange way. The roles had reversed, and everyone knew it. I wasn't the powerless daughter anymore. I was the homeowner, and the lessons they once forced on me had come full circle. Before leaving, I told them I'd have a rental agreement sent over. They both nodded silently. I walked out feeling lighter than I had in years. It wasn't revenge that I felt, it was something deeper. Justice, calm and quiet, had finally found its way home. Was balance. And for the first time in years, I felt completely at peace. Months went by, and slowly things began to change. My parents started paying rent every month, just like anyone else would. They never argued or delayed. Each payment came on time, and though it was strange at first, it became normal. I think they finally understood how it felt, not because I wanted them to suffer, but because I wanted them to see what responsibility really meant. The house started to feel different too. The same walls that once made me feel small now carried a quiet strength. Every time I walked through the door, it reminded me of how far I'd come. I wasn't the girl who had to prove her worth anymore. I was the woman who had built her life piece by piece, without taking shortcuts or begging for fairness. My relationship with Claire changed too. She eventually moved out and found a job in another city. One evening, she called me. I could tell from her voice that she was nervous. She said she'd been thinking about everything that happened, about how she got special treatment, about how unfair it all was. She apologized for not seeing things clearly when we were younger. I didn't interrupt her. I just listened. When she finished, I told her I appreciated her words. I didn't say I forgave her because deep down I already had. I wasn't angry anymore. I had no reason to be. Carrying bitterness wouldn't give me peace. It would only keep me stuck in the past. After that call, something inside me softened. For the first time, I saw Claire not as the spoiled little sister, but as someone who had finally grown up and understood. I wished her well and told her I hoped she'd keep learning and living her own life with honesty. She thanked me and promised to visit someday. As for my parents, they stayed quiet most of the time. They kept to themselves, did small repairs around the house, and tried to keep things calm. Sometimes, Mom would call to ask if I was doing okay, her tone softer than it had ever been before. I always answered politely. I didn't hold grudges, but I also didn't forget. Every now and then, I'd drive by the house just to check on it. Seeing them there didn't bring pain anymore, it brought clarity. They were living their lesson, and I was living my peace. The balance had finally settled. It wasn't about winning or losing anymore. It was about finally being free, free from old wounds, free from resentment, free from trying to earn love that should have been given. Today, when I visit that old house, everything feels different. The pain that once filled those rooms has faded away. The air doesn't feel heavy anymore. It feels calm, almost peaceful. I walk through the halls and remember the nights I cried in silence, the mornings I forced myself to smile, and the years I worked just to prove I was enough. Now, standing here, I realize I never needed to prove anything. I just needed to find myself. The walls that once made me feel trapped now make me feel strong. They used to remind me of unfairness, but now they remind me of growth. I touch the same doors, the same windows, but they no longer belong to the girl who was told she had to pay for love. They belong to the woman who learned how to earn her own peace. Sometimes I sit in my old bedroom, the one where I used to dream of freedom. The posters are gone, the paint is fading, but the memories stay. I look out the same window where I once wished for a better life, and I smile. I whisper to my younger self, "You didn't lose. You learned." Because that's the truth. Every tear, every lonely night, every unfair word became a lesson that shaped who I am today. I learned that love shouldn't be something you buy. I learned that strength doesn't always come from fighting. Sometimes it comes from walking away. And most of all, I learned that revenge doesn't have to be cruel or loud. Sometimes it's quiet. It's found in success, in peace, in finally taking back what was once used to hurt you. Now, when I look at the house, I don't see the past that broke me. I see the path that built me. I own it now, not just with a piece of paper, but with the lessons and courage it gave me. The same home that once took everything from me became the symbol of everything I reclaimed. My parents still live there, and we speak politely when I visit. There's no anger left in my heart. Time softened what bitterness couldn't. They know now what I went through, and even though we never speak about it, I can feel the quiet understanding between us. It's not forgiveness in words, it's forgiveness in peace. When I leave the house, I always take one last look before driving away. I don't feel revenge or pride or pain. I just feel calm, because I know the girl who once felt small grew into someone strong enough to rise above it all. And maybe that's the real victory. Not proving them wrong, but proving to yourself that you were always right to believe in your worth. Sometimes reclaiming what's yours isn't about owning a house. It's about owning your story. Broken heart sparkles freely, and that freedom felt better than any revenge ever could.